and welcome to this episode of the American Academy of Optometry Foundation's clinical podcast series. I'm excited today to be discussing an article titled The Effects of Lens and Fitting Characteristics Upon Scleral Lens Centration with the wonderful Marsha Malooley. I'm Andrew Pucker. I am your host. I am a fellow and diplomated Academy, and this is a particularly interesting article to me. But today, as I said, we have Marsha with us, and I was just hoping, Marsha, you could maybe give us a little bit about you.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me on. I really am excited to do this with you and get a chance to talk about this article. So, I've been practicing at Chicago Cornea Consultants, which is an ophthalmologic practice for the last 20 years. I am optometric director there. And I did my residency at Illinois College of Optometry in corneal disease and contact lenses and graduated from NECO. But I have students with me in clinic and residents on Tuesdays with me as well. And so it's fun to review articles like this and get a chance to share information with them in clinic and the clinical relevance. And so, yeah, let's get to it.
That's great. I'm working with students. I'm sure you're forced to learn all the time. So, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it keeps you on your toes for sure.
cool. Well, I kind of mentioned the name of this article, but maybe you could give us an overview of why optometrists should care about it.
Well, scleral lenses in general are taking up more of the contact lens market. And I think that practitioners are finding that they are having more uses and feeling more comfortable with fitting scleral contact lenses. We know that centration is really important when we're fitting the contact lenses, not only for patient comfort, but also for the health of the eye, because a decentered scleral lens can cause mechanical compression at the limbus. It can also cause fitting problems such as conjunctival prolapse. And in addition, optically, the patients aren't going to see as well. If a lens isn't centering well on the eye, it can cause higher order aberrations and induce residual astigmatism. So overall, a well-fitting lens is going to serve our patients better.
Yeah, I remember back when I started fitting sclerals a while ago now. We would just go really big, right? We didn't care how much corneal clearance there was, and the lenses always kind of just fell down on the eye. So knowing that and what we know in this article, kind of what were the key findings that you learned that you think people should know about?
Well, one interesting thing was they looked at the contact lenses over a 90-minute period, checking it several times during those 90 minutes. And it's interesting where the lens centered initially after the first minute was very typical of where that lens was still going to be at 90 minutes. So I thought that was interesting, indicating that we can feel the lens position is going to be fairly stable where we're seeing it. A lot of times we're looking at chair time and lens settling and that sort of thing, but lens positioning was they found to be stable. Another key finding that was interesting, so they looked at a couple of different factors and how it impacted centration, one of which was lens vault over the cornea. And so in addition to lens vault, they had looked at other physical characteristics of the lens, which was the presence of a fenestration, and it would be a single fenestration, or lens mass, the thickness of the lens. And so they had varying thicknesses of lenses that they looked at as well. And the main lens parameter that impacted centration, they found to be the vault of the contact lens over the cornea, or how much reservoir depth there was.
Yeah, so I think if I'm remembering correctly, fenestrations and thickness affected centration by under 0.1 millimeter, which is basically nothing, right?
It wasn't it wasn't statistically significant, no. But the reservoir depth, or that sagittal depth of the contact lens, they had low, mid, and high. So low was around, say, 100, 150, and then mid was 300 to 500 microns, and then high was a range close to 800 microns. And when you compared low to the mid and high, there was significantly more decentration in that mid and high depth lens, especially inferior and slightly temporal compared to the low reservoir depth.
And that makes sense from our, I think clinical practice, right? It kind of goes down, like you said. And um, why do you think that might be the case? So you have this thicker reservoir. What do you think is dragging that lens down?
Well, you're going to have the mass of the lens being out farther from the center of gravity. So it's going to be farther out. And I think that overall, it's just kind of weighing that lens down more. And we know that scleral lenses in general tend to decenter inferior and temporal. We know that from the scleral shape study that our nasal scleral profile is flatter. And we know that lenses tend to decenter in that direction anyway. But it was really interesting that, the sagittal depth made the most difference out of all the different characteristics that they had examined. And I think that in practice, if you have a lens that's decentering and you're able to maybe reduce that reservoir depth, that can be helpful then in helping your lens center better.
I think that's a great clinical message. So I think we learned, as you said, where it starts is probably where it's going to end. So that makes that part easy. And then the troubleshooting option is just make it closer to the cornea if you can. We know we can't always do that if you have a really steep cone, but you can try your best, right?
The other thing that I thought was interesting when you are considering thickness of the lens. So when we're trial fitting scleral lenses in practice, we don't always have the power of the lens that we need. A lot of times we're over refracting and we're ordering something different, and that's going to impact the thickness of the lens and so forth. And so it was kind of nice to know that the power of the lens that we were then going to order for our patient really wasn't going to have that much of an impact on the way the lens was going to center. I thought that was kind of an interesting pickup as well.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have thought that. I would have thought a thicker, heavier lens would fall down, but not the case.
Yeah, I was surprised as well.
So that's all great information. Are there any other tidbits you want our listeners to know about this paper before we close out?
No, I think that the main thing is just looking at that reservoir depth, and if you have problems with the lens centering, see if you can decrease the sagittal depth, and that could help a little bit with the centration. But overall, when we're looking at lenses on our patients, I think we can feel comfortable that the way that they are centering initially is what they're going to look like, later on in the day, hopefully. So it might reduce our worry about what that lens is going to do as it settles, at least in terms of centration.
Perfect. Well, I'd like to thank you, Marsha, for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful.
Perfect. And I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. I could ask you to do a couple things, like and subscribe, and then I hope to see you again in another episode soon. Thank you.